The Galactic Empire stretched across countless star systems, its dominion unchallenged for millennia. Its fleets, vast and unyielding, had crushed civilizations that dared resist, leaving behind only the faintest whispers of their existence. Earth, a small blue planet on the fringes of the Orion Arm, was deemed insignificant, a primitive world ripe for conquest. But one voice within the Empire's ranks dared to dissent. General Kale Thor, a veteran of countless campaigns, stood before the High Council, his silver armor gleaming under the cold light of the chamber. His voice, deep and resonant, carried the weight of experience as he delivered his warning: never, under any circumstances, attack Earth's women. The Council, a gathering of the Empire's most powerful leaders, regarded him with a mixture of amusement and disdain. High Chancellor Vrax, a towering figure with eyes like molten gold, leaned forward. "Explain yourself, General," he commanded, his tone dripping with skepticism. Kale Thor's gaze swept the room, lingering on the faces of those who had never set foot on a battlefield. "Earth's women," he began, "are not like those of other worlds. They are not mere bystanders in their society. They are its backbone, its fiercest protectors, and its most cunning strategists. To underestimate them is to invite disaster." The council erupted into laughter, the sound echoing through the chamber like a thunderclap. "You speak of primitives," sneered Admiral Zoath, her voice sharp as a blade. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. What threat could they possibly pose?" Kale Thor's jaw tightened, but he remained calm. "I have studied their history," he said. "I have seen how they rise in the face of adversity. They do not rely on brute strength or advanced weaponry. They use their minds, their hearts, their unyielding will. They are the reason Earth has survived countless crises. They are the reason it will survive us." The laughter died down, replaced by uneasy silence. Kale Thor's reputation was well known, he was not a man given to hyperbole. Yet the council could not reconcile his words with their own arrogance. "Your concerns are noted, General," Vrax said dismissively. "But the decision has been made. Earth will be brought into the Empire, and its people will serve us. If its women resist, they will be dealt with like any other obstacle." Kale Thor's eyes darkened, but he said nothing. He had done his duty. He had given his warning. Now, he could only watch as the Empire marched toward its fate. As the meeting adjourned, Kale Thor retreated to his quarters, his mind heavy with foreboding. He activated a holographic display, projecting images of Earth's history. He saw women leading revolutions, fighting wars, and rebuilding shattered societies. He saw their faces, determined, unyielding, fearless. He knew what the Council did not, that Earth's women were not just a part of their world's strength, they were its very essence. And the Empire, in its hubris, had chosen to ignore them. Meanwhile, on Earth, life continued as it always had. In a small town nestled between rolling hills, Dr. Elena Carter stood in her laboratory, her hands moving deftly over a series of complex instruments. She was a scientist, a mother, and a leader in her community. Her work on renewable energy had the potential to change the world, but her mind was elsewhere. For weeks, she had noticed strange anomalies in the sky, flickering lights, unexplained signals, and a growing sense of unease. She had tried to dismiss it as paranoia, but deep down, she knew something was coming. Her daughter, MIA, burst into the lab, her face flushed with excitement. "Mom, you have to see this," she exclaimed, holding up a tablet. On the screen was a live feed of the night sky, where a massive object was descending. Elena's heart skipped a beat. She had always known that humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial life would come someday, but she had never imagined it would be like this. She grabbed her coat and headed outside, her mind racing. Whatever was coming, she would be ready. As the alien ship loomed overhead, casting an ominous shadow over the town, Elena felt a surge of determination. She thought of the women who had come before her, those who had fought for freedom, for justice, for the future. She thought of her daughter, whose wide eyes reflected both fear and curiosity. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that they would not go down without a fight. The Galactic Empire had made a grave mistake. They had ignored Kale Thor's warning. And now, they would learn the hard way why Earth's women were not to be trifled with. The ship's engines roared, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Elena stood tall, her gaze fixed on the sky. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and she would be at the forefront. The Empire had underestimated them, but they would soon discover the truth. Earth's women were not just a part of the resistance, they were the resistance. And they would not rest until their world was free. The alien ship descended with a deafening roar, its metallic hull gleaming ominously under the pale moonlight. Dr. Elena Carter stood at the edge of the town square, her heart pounding as she watched the massive vessel hover above the ground. Around her, the townspeople gathered, their faces a mixture of fear and awe. Elena's daughter, Emma, clung to her side, her small hand trembling in her mother's grip. "What do we do, Mom?" Emma whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. Elena squeezed her hand, her mind racing. "We stay calm," she said firmly. "And we fight if we have to." The ship's ramp lowered with a hiss, and a contingent of alien soldiers marched out, their armor glinting in the dim light. They were tall, imposing figures, their faces obscured by helmets that reflected the terrified expressions of the crowd. At their head was a figure Elena recognized from her research, Admiral Zoath, the Empire's ruthless enforcer. Zoath's cold eyes scanned the crowd, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "By order of the Galactic Empire, this planet is now under our control. Resistance will be met with swift and merciless punishment." Elena stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "This is our home," she said, her words carrying a quiet strength. "You have no right to take it from us." Zoath's lips curled into a sneer. "Your home?" she mocked. "You are nothing but primitives, barely capable of understanding your place in the universe. You will submit, or you will be destroyed." The crowd murmured, their fear giving way to anger. Elena felt a surge of determination. She would not let these invaders strip her people of their dignity, or their freedom. As the alien soldiers began rounding up the townspeople, Elena's mind raced. She knew they couldn't fight the Empire head-on, not with their limited resources. But she also knew they couldn't afford to do nothing. She turned to MIA, her voice low and urgent. "Find Sarah and the others. Tell them to meet me at the lab. We need to act fast." MIA nodded, her fear replaced by a fierce determination. She darted off into the crowd, her small frame weaving through the chaos with ease. Elena made her way to her laboratory, her thoughts a whirlwind of plans and possibilities. She was joined by Sarah, a former military strategist, and a handful of other women from the town, each of them leaders in their own right. They gathered around a table, their faces grim but resolute. "We don't have much time," Elena said, her voice cutting through the tension. "We need to organize, to fight back. But we can't do it alone. We need to reach out to other communities, to unite against this threat." Sarah nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the group. "We'll need to be smart about this," she said. "Direct confrontation isn't an option. We'll have to hit them where it hurts, their supply lines, their communication networks. We'll make them regret ever setting foot on this planet." The others murmured their agreement, their fear giving way to a steely resolve. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew they had no choice. They would fight, not just for themselves, but for their children, their families, their future. Over the next few days, the women worked tirelessly, their efforts fueled by a shared sense of purpose. Elena used her scientific expertise to devise ways to disrupt the Empire's technology, while Sarah coordinated with other resistance groups across the region. They communicated in secret, using coded messages and hidden channels to avoid detection. The Empire, confident in its superiority, remained oblivious to the growing resistance, until it was too late. The first strike came at dawn, a coordinated attack on one of the Empire's supply depots. The women, armed with makeshift weapons and fueled by sheer determination, struck with precision and ferocity. The alien soldiers, caught off guard, were overwhelmed. The depot was destroyed, and the resistance sent a clear message: Earth would not be conquered without a fight. Zoath was furious. She had underestimated these primitives, and now she was paying the price. She ordered a crackdown, her soldiers scouring the region for any sign of the resistance. But the women were always one step ahead, their network of informants and safe houses proving invaluable. They struck again and again, their attacks growing bolder with each success. The Empire's forces, stretched thin and demoralized, began to falter. Elena stood at the center of it all, her leadership inspiring those around her. She had become a symbol of hope, a beacon of resistance in the face of overwhelming odds. But she knew the fight was far from over. The Empire would not give up easily, and they would stop at nothing to crush the rebellion. As she looked out over the town, now scarred by battle but still standing, she felt a surge of pride. They had struck a blow against their oppressors, but the war was just beginning. In the shadows, General Kael'thor watched from afar, his expression unreadable. He had warned the Empire, but they had refused to listen. Now, they were reaping the consequences of their arrogance. He knew the women of Earth would not stop until their world was free, and he couldn't help but admire their courage. As he turned away, a faint smile touched his lips. The Empire had made a grave mistake, and they would soon learn the true cost of underestimating Earth's women. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain: the Resistance would not rest until victory was theirs. The Empire's grip on Earth began to loosen, its once imposing presence now fractured and faltering. The Resistance, led by Elena and her network of fierce, determined women, had turned the tide. Each victory, no matter how small, chipped away at the invaders' resolve. But Elena knew the fight was far from over. The Empire, humiliated and desperate, would retaliate with everything they had. She stood in the dim light of the underground command center, her eyes scanning the maps and reports spread across the table. The room buzzed with activity, the air thick with tension and determination. Sarah approached, her expression grim but resolute. "They are regrouping," she said, pointing to a cluster of markers on the map. "If we don't act soon, they'll overwhelm us." Elena nodded, her mind racing. They needed a plan, one bold enough to strike a decisive blow but calculated enough to minimize losses. She turned to the group, her voice steady despite the weight of their situation. "We hit their command center," she said. "If we can take out their leadership, we can cripple their operations. But it won't be easy. They'll be expecting us." The room fell silent, the gravity of her words sinking in. Sarah was the first to speak. "It's risky," she admitted. "But it's our best shot. We'll need to move fast and hit hard." The others murmured their agreement, their faces set with determination. They had come too far to back down now. As the Resistance prepared for their most daring mission yet, Elena found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. She thought of the early days, when fear and uncertainty had threatened to paralyze them. She thought of the women who had risen to the challenge, their courage and ingenuity proving to be their greatest weapons. And she thought of Mia, her daughter, whose unwavering belief in their cause had been a constant source of strength. Elena knew they were fighting not just for their survival, but for the future, a future where their children could live free from fear and oppression. The night of the mission was moonless, the sky a blanket of stars that offered little comfort. Elena led the team through the dense forest, their movements silent and deliberate. The Empire's command center loomed ahead, a monolithic structure bristling with defenses. Elena's heart pounded as they approached, her senses heightened by the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She signaled for the team to halt, her eyes scanning the perimeter. "Remember," she whispered, "we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who can't. Stay focused. Stay sharp." The attack began with precision, the Resistance striking at key points to create chaos and confusion. Elena and Sarah infiltrated the command center, their movements swift and calculated. They encountered little resistance at first, the Empire's forces caught off guard by the audacity of the assault. But as they neared the heart of the complex, the fighting grew more intense. Alien soldiers, their armor gleaming under the harsh artificial light, closed in from all sides. Elena and Sarah fought back with everything they had, their determination unyielding. In the control room, they found Zoaf, her cold eyes blazing with fury. "You think you've won?" she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're nothing but insects, scurrying beneath our feet. The Empire will crush you, just as we've crushed countless others before you." Elena stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "You're wrong," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We're not insects. We're survivors. And we'll keep fighting, no matter what it takes." Zorath lunged, her movements swift and deadly, but Elena was ready. The two clashed, their struggle a blur of motion and intensity. In the end, it was Elena's resolve that proved stronger. Zorath fell, her reign of terror brought to an end. With the command center in their control, the Resistance broadcast a message to the Empire's forces still on Earth. "This is Dr. Elena Carter," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "Your leaders are gone. Your command is in ruins. Leave this planet, or face the consequences." The response was immediate. The Empire's forces, demoralized and leaderless, began to retreat. The Resistance had won a decisive victory, but Elena knew the war was far from over. The Empire would not forget this humiliation, and they would return, stronger, angrier, and more determined than ever. As the sun rose over the battered but unbroken landscape, Elena stood with her team, their faces etched with exhaustion and triumph. They had done the impossible, but the fight for Earth's future was just beginning. Elena looked out over the horizon, her mind already turning to the challenges ahead. They had proven that even the mightiest empire could be brought to its knees by the courage and determination of a few. And as long as there were women like them willing to stand up and fight, Earth would never fall. In the shadows, General Kale Thor watched from afar, his expression a mixture of pride and regret. He had warned the Empire, but they had refused to listen. Now, they were reaping the consequences of their arrogance. He turned away, his mind already racing with plans of his own. The Empire would return, of that he had no doubt. But so would the women of Earth. And when the time came, he would be ready to stand with them, not as an enemy, but as an ally. The battle for Earth was far from over, but one thing was certain, the resistance would not rest until their world was free. And neither would he. The Empire's retreat was not the end, but a fragile pause in the storm. Earth's skies, once darkened by alien warships, now shimmered with the faint hope of freedom. Yet Elena Carter felt no triumph, only the weight of what lay ahead. The resistance had struck a blow, but the Galactic Empire was vast, its resources seemingly infinite. She stood on the rooftop of the reclaimed command center, the cool night air brushing against her face as she gazed at the stars. They were no longer a source of wonder but a reminder of the enemy that lurked beyond. "They'll be back," Sarah said, joining her. Her voice was steady, but Elena could hear the tension beneath it. "And next time, they won't underestimate us." Elena nodded, her mind already racing through the possibilities. "We need to prepare," she said. "Not just for their return, but for the long fight ahead. We've proven we can stand against them, but we need more than courage. We need allies." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Allies? Who's left to stand with us?" Elena's lips curved into a faint smile. "Not everyone in the Empire agrees with their methods. There are those who see the cost of their conquests. If we can reach them, we might find a way to turn the tide for good." The idea was audacious, but Sarah didn't dismiss it. Instead, she leaned against the railing, her eyes narrowing in thought. "You're talking about General Kale Thor," she said. Elena nodded. "He warned them. He knew what would happen if they attacked Earth's women. If anyone in the Empire might be willing to help us, it's him." Sarah sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Even if he's willing, how do we reach him? The Empire's communications are locked down tighter than a vault." Elena's smile widened. "We don't reach him. He reaches us." As if on cue, a faint hum filled the air, and a small, sleek shuttle descended from the sky, its engines glowing softly in the darkness. Elena and Sarah exchanged a glance before moving to the landing pad, their weapons at the ready. The shuttle's ramp lowered, and a single figure emerged, his silver armor gleaming under the moonlight. General Kale Thor raised his hands in a gesture of peace, his expression unreadable. "I come alone," he said, his voice calm but firm. "And I come with a proposal." Elena stepped forward, her gaze steady. "You warned them," she said. "And they didn't listen. Why should we trust you now?" Kale Thor's eyes met hers, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something, regret, perhaps, or respect. "Because I was wrong," he admitted. "I thought my warning would be enough. I thought they would see reason. But they didn't, and now countless lives have been lost, on both sides. I can't undo what's been done, but I can help you end this. For good." The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Sarah crossed her arms, her skepticism evident. "And what do you get out of this?" she asked. Kale Thor's gaze didn't waver. "A chance to redeem myself," he said. "A chance to stop the Empire from destroying another world. And perhaps, a chance to see it become something better." Elena studied him for a long moment, weighing his words. She had spent her life trusting science, logic, and evidence. But now, faced with a choice that could change everything, she found herself relying on something else, instinct. "We'll hear you out," she said finally. "But if this is a trick, you won't live to regret it." Kale Thor nodded, his expression solemn. "I would expect nothing less." Over the next few days, the resistance worked with Kale Thor to devise a plan. It was a delicate balance of trust and caution, each side testing the other's limits. Kale Thor provided invaluable intelligence on the Empire's operations, while Elena and her team shared their knowledge of Earth's terrain and resources. Together, they crafted a strategy that would not only defend Earth but strike at the heart of the Empire itself. The plan hinged on a daring move, infiltrating the Empire's central hub, a massive space station that served as the nerve center of their operations. If they could disable it, they could cripple the Empire's ability to wage war, not just on Earth, but across the galaxy. It was a risky gambit, but the alternative was unthinkable. "We'll need a small team," Elena said during one of their planning sessions. "People who can move quickly and think on their feet." Sarah nodded. "I'll lead the ground team. But we'll need someone on the inside to guide us." All eyes turned to Kale Thor, who didn't hesitate. "I'll do it," he said. "But once we're in, there's no turning back." The night before the mission, Elena found herself unable to sleep. She wandered through the command center, her thoughts a whirlwind of doubt and determination. She found MIA in the makeshift infirmary, tending to the wounded. Her daughter looked up, her face lighting up with a smile. "You should be resting," MIA said, her tone gently chiding. Elena sighed, sitting beside her. "I can't," she admitted. "Too much to think about." MIA reached out, taking her hand. "You'll figure it out," she said. "You always do." Elena smiled, her heart swelling with pride. MIA had grown so much in the past months, her innocence tempered by the harsh realities of war. But she had also found her strength, her voice. She was a reminder of what they were fighting for, not just survival, but a future worth living. "I'm proud of you," Elena said softly. Mia's eyes glistened with tears, but she didn't look away. "I'm proud of you too, Mom. We're going to win this. I know it." The next morning, the team set out, their resolve unshakable. The mission was fraught with danger, but they moved with precision and purpose. Kale Thor guided them through the station's defenses, his knowledge proving invaluable. But as they neared their objective, they were met with unexpected resistance. The Empire had anticipated their move, and the station was swarming with soldiers. The team fought valiantly, but the odds were against them. Just as it seemed all was lost, Kale Thor made a choice that would change everything. He activated the station's self-destruct sequence, his voice calm as he relayed the final coordinates to Elena. "Get your team out," he said. "I'll hold them off." Elena hesitated, but there was no time to argue. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Kale Thor nodded, his expression resolute. "This is my redemption," he said. "Make it count." As the team escaped, the station erupted in a blinding explosion, its light visible even from Earth. The Empire's central hub was gone, and with it, their ability to coordinate their forces. The resistance had won a decisive victory, but the cost was high. Elena stood on the surface of Earth, her eyes fixed on the sky. The fight was far from over, but they had taken a crucial step toward freedom. And as long as there were people willing to stand up and fight, Earth would never fall.